different fishing camps are and have been, and even as they walk through this park, are probably seeing multiple landscapes at the same time. So all of those tents there are part of the seasonal fishing camp along the base of Whatcom Creek. I want my students, when they go to Albertsons, out there on Northwest, to see this as well, the Bellingham coal mines. And this is where the Herald scooped me a little bit on this. In fact, I want my students to maybe think about something, a terrible academic making up terms, the possibility of ghostscapes. Back in the 1970s, Maxine Hong Kingston was a fairly well-known author, and she still is today. She wrote a book called Chinamen. Some of you heard of that? Yes, no, maybe so. Students hate this part when you ask rhetorical questions. Maxine Hong Kingston is a Chinese-American writer. And she said that America is a land without ghosts. And what she meant by that is that the deep history of Chinese people in the place wasn't there, and that it seemed to be a very transitory place without deep connections. Now that may well have been for her, and it certainly is for most of us as Westerners. I didn't understand colonial American history. Students, you should tune this part out. I didn't understand colonial American history until after I was done with graduate school and had my first teaching job in the Boston area. And I went into Boston, and I went to the graveyard there in downtown Boston. I think it's near the Granary. Yeah? And 1647, whatever the gravesite was. And that was the first time I felt a sense of that we really do have a deep national history in that place and here. As a Westerner, if something's in 1890, oh, that's really old, that's so ancient here. I hope I've gotten a little bit more sophisticated sense of history over the several decades now since I first started teaching. But this idea of ghostscapes, in other words, a landscape full of memory that continues to exist, struck me as a kind of powerful way to think about this. And I want to sort of suggest to you that we might think about this. In fact, the coal mines are a really, really great way to think about this. The shaded spot here that you can see is the underground location of most of the mine shafts of this area. And some of you are familiar with this. Many of you are familiar with this. One of my favorite maps is a map that we have at the Center for Pacific Northwest Studies. And it's about 3.5 feet wide by about 12 feet long. And it shows every mine shaft from the entrance of the mine all the way out to the bay. And if you can make out above this, so the north, south, east, west lines here are actually the mine shaft and the pillars. And up above it, you can see running Maplewood at an angle, and northwest, looks like it's running north-south there. The map actually shows the surface streets and structures above the mine shaft when the map was created in the 1920s. And it seems to me that what this map allows us to do is to see multiple landscapes in time. We have a surface and a subsurface structure here, multiple uses of the place. And if we think about that now, we think about it across time as well. I can't go past Albertsons, which is not too far from my home, and think about the people's working lives, the people in my neighborhood who at one point worked there. I can't think about the covenant in my deed to my house that says the coal mine company gets the coal down below. I hope that that doesn't happen, but. So we're left with this question then, what does public history accomplish? I think it accomplishes for Western students, painfully sometimes for them, it gets them off campus in a positive way. It gets them to understand Bellingham as something more than temporary housing. It gets them to see historic or ghost landscapes over more than a 4-year history. Because their history is only as long as they've been here, really, in this place, unless we can stretch that. And I think it also gets them to understand the application of their major, which is history, to something other than the academic setting. The possibilities that this is something that doesn't have to be done in a classroom, that has meaning out beyond the classroom. For Western, I think it lets us be something more than the ivory tower on the hill without parking. Now, but more seriously, it offers a resource that we have. Student hours, limited faculty expertise to the broader community. And it engages students in the life of their temporary home, which is, I think, a really important thing. I'm hoping that this handful of students who cycle through this look at Bellingham differently and think about Bellingham differently and interact with Bellingham differently so that you will understand them differently too. What does the community get out of this? What do you folks get out of this? This should add to what you value about the place. It should add to how you can understand the place by the contributions that the students are making to creating these databases, to identifying photos, to create a sense of place that has a deep and layered set of meanings. So if we think about landscapes and ghostscapes, does knowing different histories in our own backyards allow us to see the same things? Is this just, it's not my backyard. My backyard would be littered with soccer stuff and other types of things. But I look back there in my own backyard and I think about the ways that Squalicum Creek must have come through there over the millennia. I think about the coal mine down below. I think about the creation of Cornwall Park as an auto camp at one point in time. I think about the falls there being a fisheries site. There are lots and lots of things going on simultaneously as I look in my backyard and in my neighborhood. Rather than just thinking, who lived in my house and what's the legal history of this structure, to try to see the structure existing in a broader landscape. And that was really what I'm hoping the point of my talk here tonight is that I think that public history is a way for all of us to think about landscape, not just my little academic corner, not just my house that I live in, but my storied world, my storied landscape that I have to understand in order to be something more than just a user and abuser of history.